All right, next up, Dave Johnson writes, "Hey, John, I work in an industry with an extensive distribution network, and I find the recent dust-up between AMC and Universal to be very fascinating. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about the distribution dynamics of the film industry?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Dave. And you know what? It's going to sound like a weird answer, but I honestly feel like this fixes the distribution dynamics. Now, you got to understand, movie theaters are expensive to run and operate. Having these massive locations in major city centers with tons of staff, luxury interiors, depending on the theater that you're in, and all that kind of stuff. And it is the place that people come to watch the movies. I have said for a long time that I believe probably the root of a lot of the problems in the film industry, and this includes distribution, is how the studios have become completely irresponsible in how much money they spend in making these movies. Because think about it. The more money they spend in making these movies, the more they need to make back exponentially to break even and, hey, turn a profit. The lower they spend, the easier it is, and the more money there is for everybody. The more expensive the movies become, the more money they need to make back. The more they need to make back, they put pressure on the movie theaters to increase ticket prices and take larger percentages of that ticket price, which then gets passed on to you and me as filmgoers that we need to pay more money. And with the theaters getting less and less of a percentage of that, they need to raise prices on popcorn and soda because that's where they make their actual money to keep the lights on in these temples of the movies. I actually believe it's a systemic problem that goes all the way back to we live in an era that spending on these movies has gotten way out of control. And for too many years, whenever I've raised that alarm, a lot of film fans would look at me and say, well, John, why do you care? It's not your money that they spend. Because ultimately, it does end up being you and me that pay for it. And honestly, I think if that became an alleviated point of pressure, then things like distribution becomes less of a problem. They become less contentious. There's more money for everybody when they don't need to have as much money flowing in because they get out of control. You know, somebody brought up District 9 the other day. District 9 is a big visual effects heavy movie that they made for $30 million. Blumhouse just made The Invisible Man for $7 million. Now, I'm not saying you could have made Avengers Endgame for $35 million. I'm not saying that. But did it really cost $250? You really couldn't have made that movie as it is for less than $250 million? Like now we're hearing reports that Marty Scorsese wants his next drama. He wants a $200 million budget for his next drama. Why? And I actually really truly believe, Dave, it's a systemic problem, and a lot of it gets traced right back to how much movies have lost control of the amount of spending that they have. So that's just a thought of mine. I'm sure we could talk about that for hours on end, though. All right.